You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibe. On July 31st, a magistrate court in Zuba, on the outskirts of Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory, dismissed the assault case instituted by the police against a federal lawmaker, Senator Elisha Abu. The court upheld the no-case submission filed by Senator Abu, saying the police failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt that the lawmaker indeed assaulted Osimbibra Wamate on May 11, 2019. Now, this is despite a viral video showing Senator Abu allegedly assaulting the woman and a televised press conference where he apologized to the victim. Reactions have been trailing the judgment of the magistrate court as civil rights activists and lawyers gave their opinions on the judgment.
You are very stupid. What's your problem? You are very stupid. I think you are very stupid. I will come with you. Are you mad? I know where you go. I think you are very stupid.
In July 2019, a video showing then Senator-elect Elisha Abu physically assaulting a woman began circulating online. Details later emerged that Senator Abu allegedly physically assaulted Ms. Osimbibra Wamate in a sex toy shop in Wuse, Abuja on May 11, 2019, following her intervention in a disagreement involving Senator Abu and the shopkeepers after his companion vomited and fainted in the shop. The video, which went viral, angered many Nigerians who organized protests at the police headquarters and the National Assembly, demanding justice. While the police promised to investigate the assault, the Senate also set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the matter.
With all due respect to you, I will sit here. You are my colleague.
Senator Abu appeared before the committee, but was visibly angered by the questions from his colleagues.
In the statement, he was able to tell us what has passed throughout the period, including those ones that was not captured on video. And we have also asked our own questions, asking for people who can bear witness to all he said.
However, the report by the committee is yet to be presented on the floor.
I am here to apologize to Nigerians.
Days after, in a news conference, Senator Abu apologized to Nigerians, particularly to the family of the woman he assaulted.
With deep sense of remorse and responsibility, that I, Senator Ishaku Abu, profoundly apologize to all Nigerians, the Senate, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, my family, my friends, as well as our mothers, the Nigerian women. I personally apologize to Bibra and her family for my actions. No matter what you did to me, you don't deserve such treatment. I am sorry.
But on July 31st, a magistrate court in Zuba, on the outskirts of Abuja, dismissed the assault case instituted by the police against Senator Abu. The court upheld the no-case submission filed by Senator Abu, saying the police failed to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt that the lawmaker indeed assaulted Osimbibra Wamate on May 11, 2019. This is despite a viral video showing Senator Abu assaulting the woman and a televised press conference where he apologized to the victim.
The court found that press conference granted by Senator Abu is not a confessional statement which can be used in convicting him. And therefore, the court was of the view that based on the evidence presented by the prosecution, including the victim herself, is not enough to substantiate the allegation. And therefore, under Section 303 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, the accused is discharged. And what that means is that discharge under that provision is an acquittal by virtue of the Supreme Court case of Mohammed against the state, where the Supreme Court firmly held that where an accused person is discharged under a no-case submission, he is acquitted. It can no longer be rearranged on that matter except to go on appeal. So my view is simple. What the court say is what it is, that the prosecution did not prove his case beyond reasonable doubt, and the accused is entitled to walk away.
Buki Shonibare was one of the protesters demanding justice for the assaulted victim. She says the court verdict is a big blow to Nigerians and a setback on the war against gender-based violence.
Saying that the video evidence, the CCTV, or the Elisha Abu's apology was not tenable or the medical reports. Those were the three evidence that were presented, that they were not sufficient in proving that case. Then we have a problem where the system is designed to protect the high and mighty against the low and vulnerable.
She's also extremely disappointed with law enforcement agencies and the National Assembly.
If we look at both angles, we know that duty bearers, like the police under the executive arm of government, and the Senate, not just because what touches one, what affects one person affects all of them, but because they are the ones that make laws. And if you make law and you have one of you violating the laws that you are making, then the joke is on you. What is important is when you make laws, ensure that every member have architecture systems in place where one of your own goes against that law. You do everything possible to make sure that the person does not stand any longer as a lawmaker.
It was too clear. Everybody.
Wande Ede is a gender rights activist. She says the court verdict underscores the difficulties in accessing justice for gender-based violence.
You spend money to open files, you spend money to move files from one point to another, to arrest the suspects. You're going to spend money if you go to the police. If you have to go to court, before the case is charged to court, you're going to just keep spending money. And at the end of the day, you're not even sure if you're going to get justice. Like I said, in almost 5 years, we have never won any case successfully, be it rape or domestic violence or any form of gender-based violence. So it's frustrating. It's like you're fighting a fight that you might never win. So, and then with cases like this, it's so discouraging. It just shows that it's okay to beat women. It's okay to violate the rights of women.
It is not known for now if the judgment will be appealed by the police or the victim.
Before the National Assembly went on its annual recess, the Senate passed a bill to repeal the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act 2004 to reenact the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act 2020. Now, this bill is intended to regulate banking and other financial institutions in the country. With the passage of the bill, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria will have the powers to impose and review penalties on the prevalence of infractions in the banking sector to a maximum amount of 100 million naira. The new amendment has also allowed for the creation of a special tribunal for the enforcement and recovery of eligible loans and also the speedy resolution of loan-related matters. We had a chat with the chairman, Senate Committee on Banking, Senator Obasani, to learn more about the bill.
The Boffe Act, like you mentioned, is a very important bill which was enacted as far back as 1991. And of course, there were some few major adjustments between 2002 and 2004. But we have not been able to really look at the Boffe Act and look at the problems that we might be able to face if we don't actually amend the Boffe Act and reenact a law that can be able to meet the global best practices. And of course, because of that crisis which we faced in the past, if you recall 2009, we faced a major global recession, which virtually every country faced a difficult economic situation, Nigeria inclusive, where a lot of banks went out of business. Some were completely down. Some were actually saved by the government through the bailout. And of course, until this moment, I cannot say that the problem have been entirely solved. That is the reason why myself and my colleague decided to look into the Boffe Act and amend it this time around so that we can be able to bring it to meet the global best practices. And of course, we are also likely going to face a major economic crisis, not in Nigeria, but globally because of this very serious problem of this COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, you know, a lot of countries have been adjusting their banking laws. A lot of countries have also been coming up with some interventions to save their economies. And the only way we can be able to stabilize our economy is to be able to amend the Welfare Act. Of course, we did that. And of course, we made some additions, and we also look at the relevant section of the law. They were obsolete, and we were able to change it. We made a lot of amendments and interventions, which I believe will certainly stabilize our economy.
Now, there are still several problems plaguing Nigeria's banking sector, ranging from inefficient service delivery, bad loans, and general distrust of some people for the banking sector. Does this bill address these issues?
Yes, it addresses issues in many ways. If you look at the clause 57 of the Welfare Act, you can realize that we come in with I was telling you that we came in with the bail-in. Right now, when we're talking about the bail-in instead of bail-out, is to be able to create a kind of an avenue where central bank and banks will have a resolution fund, which we will put in place annually. It will be funded by central bank and some banks annually to be able to address any major crisis in the financial sector. That was not in place in the past. We decided to create that. And the reason why we are trying to do that is because we have been faced with a lot of complaints of sharp practices. A lot of customers are complaining. And of course, we also have to save the banks. So we decided now to come up with this very important addition, that is a bail-in, where there will be a resolution fund. Both the central bank and commercial banks will put in the money to save any financial institution that's in crisis. That is one. Two, we also look critically and look at the issue of dormant accounts. You see, because a lot of dormant accounts, people are complaining about dormant accounts, that the banks certainly are not really being fair to them. When your account is in dormant, the banks certainly will continue to charge the accounts. If you look at clause 3 of the Welfare Act, we have decided to resolve that issue so that we can be able to also be fair to the consumers. And certainly, we have also come with a lot of interventions where we look at the penalties, for infractions by the banks, which we believe some of them are really very small. And we decided to now adjust them. Of course, when you look at some section of the welfare, you realize that most of those complaints by the customers have been fully addressed by this very law. And of course, at the end of the day, I have no doubt in my mind, because we will look at the complaints of the customers. In my capacity as the chairman of the Committee on Banking, I received complaints virtually on a daily basis by Nigerians complaining about the problems they're facing with their own banks. And because of that, we decided to be able to include the clause 8, clause number 3, in the Welfare Act, which will address the problem of consumers. And by implication, we will try as much as possible also to protect the banks themselves, because we are not only looking at protecting the customers, but we must protect the banks also for them to be stable.
Let me take you back to the Banking Sector Resolution Fund. I want to know, how will this fund be managed? And will it be in the form of loans to the ailing banks?
No. Usually, it will be managed by the central bank. Because if you realize, like I told you in the past, central bank came with interventions by bailing out the banks, where over 4 trillion was used to bail out banks in the past when they were in total crisis with liquidity. And of course, we believe we have to discourage the use of public funds to bail out banks. That is the reason why we believe it is necessary and it's important to encourage the central bank and the banks to set up these resolution funds. And these funds will be managed by the central bank, but in conjunction with the commercial banks. The whole idea is, when they have the fund in place, whenever there's any crisis in the financial services sector. Not only banks, there are many other financial institutions that are very important. Then they can use the money, the funds, to bail the institution. And for me, it's a very important intervention. Like I was telling you, the 4 trillion that was used to buy the bad loans from banks to save them from dying in the past. Up till this moment, we have not been able to recover anything. And the sad situation is that about 15% of the people that, when you look at the 4 trillion that was used, what I'm trying to say in essence is, when we talk to AMCON and look and analyze the loans, we realize that 15% of Nigerians took virtually most of these loans. So that is a problem. So when you bail out banks, I realize that the money which the federal government used to bail out the banks are public funds, and is going to be used to solve the problem of only 15% of the number of people that took the loan. It's really, really very terrible situation, and we feel if we want the financial services sector to be stable, we have to come up with something. That is one of the major interventions we did. And of course, we also decided to include in this current buffer credit tribunal. We call it loan tribunal, you can call it credit tribunal.
Now, the amendment of the Bofia Act stipulates that the CBN governor has now been given powers to impose sanctions on several infractions from banks. Now, what are the infractions which this bill envisages, and what penalties?
No. These penalties have not been changed. It's still the same penalties, but the only thing we review is the amount of money. Because this law, like I told you, was enacted since 1991. And when it was, when there was very, very little amendment, 2004, nobody looked at the issue of the penalties. Right now, we felt, when you look at the law, they're talking about 200,000, 100,000. Now we believe it is too small because you cannot be charging a whole bank for committing an offense, either against a customer or against or breaching any regulatory law. Charging them 200,000, 300,000 is not going to stop anybody from committing such offenses. And in that case, we decided to now move it up. Maybe in the case of breaching any regulatory law, we have given the central bank power to look at the gravity of the offense, because of course I cannot sit down here and tell you these are the offense. The offense happens on a daily basis. It depends on the complaint by a customer. Then of course that is the reason why we believe the penalties have to be reviewed, and we have reviewed them, and of course I'm sure everybody is happy about it. Even the banks are happy, the customers will be happy, and that will go a long way in stabilizing the banks themselves.
Now, talking about loans, it's ironic that, we have people who are unwilling to pay back their loans, whereas there are Nigerians and people, SMEs who generally need loans for their businesses. And some banks have notoriously not been able to provide loans for these SMEs. This issue, does this bill look at this problem?
Yeah, we come in with, you can see that there's a particular clause in the bill that is talking about insider lending, because we want to discourage the banks from giving loans to only people that are related to them or themselves. So we also come with a clause that have addressed that fully. You can see that we have also been able to tackle the issue of insider lending, where we have made it clear that even the banks themselves, if you are working in the bank, whether you're a director, you cannot take a loan up to 3 million, which was there in the old buffer. You can only take a loan of 1 million naira. That is the maximum. Why are we doing that? It's because we want to eradicate the issue of insider lending, so that we can allow the banks to be able to refocus their own energy towards providing loans to not only big businesses, even to SMEs, because that's the only way we can grow our economy.
Another problem, which some Nigerians have about concerning banks and other financial institutions are, issues of unnecessary charges by banks.
Yeah, this is also being addressed in this very important welfare amendment bill, which, of course, like I told you, we have looked at that issue critically. Of course, we have given the central bank power now, because they are the regulator of these commercial banks, to make sure that whenever you have any problem with a commercial bank or any financial institution, a customer should always be the one to be considered first before the bank, because if you have any problem before, you have to go to face a lot of difficulties, face a lot of unnecessary stress to recover your own money. Right now, we made it clear that the customer must be able to get his money on or before 24 hours from the time he reported the infractions. So this is also going to assist the customer, and it will also give the banks a level of integrity, because in the past, I can assure you, maybe the banks are not looking at this issue seriously. A lot of people are complaining. Maybe you will walk up one day and do a transaction, the money will not get to the person you want to send the money to, and yet you've not seen the reversal in your own account, and you have to be moving up and down to be able to get your money back. And we have been able to address this issue in this Welfare Act. And of course, we have given the banks maximum of 48 hours to be able to reverse that transaction, or the central bank can impose some penalties to the banks.
Now, over time, we've seen banks and some financial institutions, engage in massive casualization of staff, and some have said that this is a way that these organizations take advantage of the employment crisis in the country, to take advantage of these people who really need work and are not actually paid well. Does this bill, the amendment of this welfare bill, does this address this issue?
Yeah, we look at the issue. Of course, you remember at the public hearing, even the Nigeria Labour Congress made a very important presentation. And of course, that's the reason why we looked through the Welfare Act and we removed Section 45 of the old welfare, where it gives the president the power to prescribe anything like that. So we decided to say no. Let's remove, because the Nigerian government have signed a treaty with the international labor organizations. So we are trying to also extend that to financial sector services, so that we can be able to protect them also. So the bank will not say, oh, we're not government, we can do whatever we like. We look at that area, and we were able to expunge Section 45 up in this current welfare. It was in the former welfare, but we remove it now. And I listened carefully to the submission of Nigeria Labour Congress, and I look at it critically, and I believe they are right. What we look at critically is the terms of the employment. Because, of course, if you are coming to work with anybody, you need to sign a terms to work with a person. And we cannot go to the banks and tell them, look, this is how you are going to draft their own agreement. That is beyond our power. But in any case, we try as much as possible to protect the banks, protect the people working with the banks, and protect the customers. That's all about this act.
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.